Go ahead.
Awesome. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first day of the programming bootcamp. My name is Arnav, and I'm one of your co-leads for programming this year. So I was the assistant lead last year. This is my third year on the team, and if you look on the slide, that is my email. Anish, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm the other programming co-lead for this year. Last year, I was also an assistant lead. This is also my third year on the team. And of course, you can see my email down there.
Eileen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Eileen. This is my fourth year on the team. I'm one of the programming assistant leads, and my email is right there.
All right, hi guys, I'm Sanjay. This is my first year as a system lead. It's my third year on team, and my email is right there.
Hey guys, I'm Nihil. I'm part of the class of 2023 at Troy High. This is going to be my third year on the team, and I'm one of the programming assistant leads this year, and that's my email listed below.
All right, so we'll go over our member expectations. So for attendance, a minimum of 75% of meeting attendance is expected and required. Resources will be available for students who are not able to attend the meetings, and attendance will be taken via Google Forms or coding rooms, as well as whoever joins this meeting. Attending team events such as team bondings, outreach, and fundraisings are sometimes optional, but sometimes required. And you guys must attend the build sessions that you are assigned to.
Moving on to our other member expectations, we will request that you have a proficiency in Java by the end of this boot camp. This may require self-motivation and practice outside of the meetings, and this will be measured based on a performance that will be taken on the 7th day, next Saturday, through a mini programming test.
All right, so a little bit about what programmers do. So FRC robot programming is based on Java on a device called the RoboRio using VS Code. Build season is during January through February, and competition season is during March through April. This is still tentative. So by being an active member, you will learn Java, version control, vision tracking, PAD correction, and an increased level of problem solving and logic skills. Here are a few of our pictures from the previous 2 years.
So how do we expect you to learn how to program? So of course we're going to be using this boot camp. Date and time is right now. I forgot to change that on the slides. But yes, we are learning it right now as of today. Of course, you have your laptop with you joining the call. The required software will be installing today, and all slides will be available online, and this is going to be required for all members. Then after the conclusion of our boot camp, we'll be selecting a couple of people to work on our robot programming training team.
So what do you do next? We will send you, Anish, could you put this slideshow in the chat? So basically, you will have access to our Google Drive folder, which will have all the presentations that you guys will see throughout the week. And to familiarize yourself, you guys can watch the 2020 game animation and visit the Blue Alliance, which has our team statistics. When you guys see this slide, you also see this bootcamp plan. This is what Mr. Tu has sent in a previous email as well, which basically includes installation documents and our team meeting links. So by a show of hands, who has installed VS Code? If you guys could use the raise hand feature, yep. All right, that's that's almost half, a little over half. That's good. So if you guys could try to install it by tomorrow or by Monday's bootcamp at the latest. It'd be awesome if you guys could install it during this session as well. You guys can put your hands down. All right, now we'll move on to our content. But before we start, does anyone have any questions?
You can just speak up. You don't need to raise hands.
Hey, Arnav, do you want to describe what VS Code is to students? Java is the language, but what is the VS Code?
Yeah, sure. So VS Code is an IDE, which stands for Integrated Development Environment. So basically, that is where we would actually program in Java. So we will program our robot code in VS Code, and VS Code will basically build the robot code and basically share the robot code to the robot. And VS Code is basically the editor we use to make our programs. Claire, you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
No, I just had it up for VS Code.
Oh, okay, no problem. Anyone else? Somya?
Yeah, so I was just wondering, basically you would have to pass the little mini assessment quiz thing at the end to be on the programming team, or?
So we'll describe this more throughout the week, but basically the mini test is basically for us to gauge your level of your understanding of Java, and it would kind of help us decide on which team you would be on within programming, because programming will have multiple teams because of the amount of people we have.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? All right, I guess we can start on our content. Okay, so programming and programmers. We described this a little bit previously.
Arnav, your audio cut out. Anish, do you want to take over? Because Arnav's audio is out.
All right, yeah, sure. So programming and programmers. So what is programming? Programming is primarily a creative problem-solving type thing. Programmers are some of the artists of the engineering world. It's more of a craft trade rather than a science. You don't really, there's no one way to always do things. There's always like multiple ways, and it depends on how you think about the problem. And it doesn't really always require a degree, hence we can learn it. But it does require a constant practice, just like, let's say, painting. It requires you to constantly practice, adapt to new tools and technologies and different ways to solve different problems. And there is always something new that will be there. So, and on top of that, it's a really cool thing because the job market will not be going away. The current talent demand leads to super high wages. Some places, I think I saw 120 grand starting pay, which is insane. And and then on top of that, you have like the freedom to work in any region you choose.
Alright, so one of the tools that we use is GitHub. GitHub is one of the most popular free Git hosting sites, and our team uses it. It has good support for teams and permissions, and it allows groups to showcase their code it allows us to showcase our code after the season's over. And fun fact, it was purchased by Microsoft for $7.5 million. But so what is Git? Git is one of the most popular code versioning systems. It allows developers to collaborate using a single code repository, and it keeps a history of all the different code changes. It has tools for keeping different branch copies of code for experimental development, and it helps you build a programming portfolio to showcase the projects you've created or contributed to. So if you follow that link, that's our team's GitHub repository. Oh, wait. It's on the next slide, but yeah. Oh, sorry, I think Arnav's like having a hard time with Teams right now. Here, I'll screen share. Alright, can you guys all see that?
Yeah, we could see it.
Okay. Alright. So, some more basics that you might need to know for programming. So, computer memory. Applications store temporary information in RAM, and computers do all their work in ones and zeros, so binary, which is fairly difficult to understand since people like you're used to using base 10 math. But programming has come far enough that you don't really need to know binary in order to code and like work with computers. So not super relevant. And then just because we sprinkled a bunch of memes throughout this presentation to make it more interesting for you guys. Alright, and then so some of the different types of languages are differentiated as strictly typed and loosely typed. So strictly typed languages are typically compiled or semi-compiled languages. These would be ones that you need to define types for every variable that you create. So like C or C Sharp or C++. Java, which is the one that we use for coding the robots, is a strictly typed language. And then loosely typed, you don't need to specify the type for every variable that you create. And these are typically interpreted languages, including Python, which I think we have a Python subgroup this year, and then also JavaScript, Ruby, and PHP.
All right, so let's talk about the main method. So the main method is an entry point to whatever program you're writing. So what that means is as you run your program, the first thing the computer looks for is a main method, and it runs everything inside that. So in a program, only one main method can exist. So for now, all your code should exist in the method's curly braces, and we'll talk about curly braces later. All right, so semicolons. So semicolons are really important in Java. So semicolons and a statement. So with a statement just says a statement just tells the computer like what to do. So if you like add a number, then the statement is just to add the number. So the semicolon basically tells the computer when one statement ends and another one begins. So you can have multiple statements per line, like the program will still work, but it's not good practice because it makes the code look messy and hard to understand. So you don't put semicolons after the curly braces, only after statements. All right, so what are curly braces? So curly braces separate logical blocks of code. So some examples of these logical blocks are class definitions, method definitions, and various control statements. And don't worry if you don't know exactly what these mean now. We'll learn about them as we go on through bootcamp. So the contents inside each of the curly braces should be indented with one or more column, so that you can tell which code is like inside the curly braces. And then if you're using VS Code, if you just press Control plus Alt plus F, it'll automatically format your code, including the indentations. All right, some more memes. All All right, so comments. So comments are just text written code that is not compiled or interpreted. So basically what comments are for is to explain the code for humans like yourself or other people who you're working with. So single line comments start with a double dash, and they can exist on a line on their own, or after another statement. These are useful to explain what a single line of code does. And you can also do multiple line comments. And these start with a dash and a star, and then in the middle you put whatever comment you want, and then they end with a star and a dash. Mainly people use these to describe what the entire program does. More memes. All right. So now we'll write some code. So if you have VS Code, open it now. And if someone can volunteer, preferably a vet, to screen share and walk us through. I mean, yeah. So if someone can screen share VS Code for us, someone can volunteer. Rohan Kohli. If you have VS Code, can you screen share? All right, I'll just do it. All right, so assuming you have VS Code open, you should see this welcome slide. All right, so you see this, and then you click open folder. So basically what we're gonna do now is to create a folder to put all our bootcamp files for the future, so we can look at them, so we can store them all in one place. So so first we'll pick a place to oh wait, can you guys see the file explorer?
Yeah, we can see it good.
All right. Yeah, so just pick a place to put your bootcamp folder. I'll just put mine in desktop so I can find it easier. And then you press new folder, and then just name it bootcamp or whatever else you want, and then you select that folder. So then this will open. Just click I trust all doctors, and this will open the bootcamp folder. So here, you just click new file, and you name the file hello world.java, and make sure it's exactly spelled like this with a capital H and capital W. All right, so is everyone to this step yet?
Oh, and also more importantly, don't forget the .java, otherwise it's just gonna be a text file and it's not gonna run anything.
All right, so if you have VS Code and you're on this step, I mean, sorry, if you're not on this step, raise your hand if you have any problems. All right, I guess everyone's good. Oh, yeah, Aruma, do you have a problem?
Yeah, I can't see your screen. Like, it only showed up at the end. Could you just quickly say what
Oh, yeah.
you do again?
All right, so do you have a screen like this?
Yeah, but I couldn't create the folder, so do we just have to go into Visual Studio and create it?
Yeah, all right, so do you have this page?
Yeah,
the
I do.
welcome page? All right, so click on open folder, and then it should open your file explorer. Does it do that?
Yeah, it does.
All right, so just go to desktop and then click on new folder and then name it bootcamp and select that folder. And then you should be on and then on the side you should see something that says bootcamp here. So do you have that yet?
Yeah, I do.
All right, so just click new file and then name it hello world.java.
All right, thank you.
All right, yeah. All right, wait, let me go back to the presentation.
Oh, and everyone who doesn't have VS Code installed yet, like, still try to stay along, keep up with what we're doing so that you can try this out on your own once you get VS Code installed.
All right, so in the hello world file, you should type this text into the file. You don't have to worry about what the words mean as of now. As we go on through bootcamp, we'll learn what they mean. So for now, just type them out, and we'll give you a few minutes. All right, so is everyone done typing them? If not, just say. All right, I'll take that as a yes. All right, so now we're gonna print the hello world to our console. So inside of the main method, which you just type in this statement, system.out.println. So this is the first statement we'll be learning. So this is how you print something to the console. So if you want like a shortcut, you can just type sysout and then press Control space and then tab, and then it will type this whole thing out. So whatever you put inside the parentheses, that will come in the console. But one really important thing to remember is that you have to put it in quotations. So for example, just type hello world exclamation mark in quotations. All right. So if you want to run the code, there should be a play button on the top right of the of your screen. So if you click that and then if it runs, then you'll see hello world at the bottom. So everyone can try doing that right now. And if you don't get hello world in the problem, just tell us. And make sure your code is exactly like this. Oh, okay, wait. Hold up. And I'll show you guys how to do it. 1 second.
Ankit, do you have a question?
Whenever I run the code, it's saying you don't have an extension for debugging Java. Should we find a Java extension in the marketplace?
I believe so, yes. Just go ahead and install that.
Okay.
It'll say like an install button. I say click it.
All right, so here's how you would do it. So I'm typing in the same code that I have on a slide that I had on slides. So you would type public class hello world, and then you put your curly braces. and then public static void main. All right, so as I said, you can type sysout, and then you just press tab, and then that'll fill in the entire system.out.println. And then in parentheses, we would type hello world. And then make sure to save. You save by pressing Control S. And then you guys should have a play button on the top right here. So just click that and then click Run Code. And then as you can see in the output, it just says Hello World. So you guys can try this yourself, and if you guys are still having troubles, you can just tell us. I'll keep my code on screen here.
Raise your hand when you're done with this step.
For some reason, my Visual Studio says there are too many errors, but I have the exact same thing. So,
Do you mind if you screen share?
I'm on 2 devices.
Oh. What does it say anything along with the error if you hover over it? Is it like error in the code itself?
I don't know. It says main method not found in file.
Oh, make sure, did you type the main part right? So public space static space void space main, and in the parentheses, string, and then square brackets, and then args. Sanjay, if you pull that up,
Yeah.
that line 2 on there,
Yeah,
is that like letter for letter? Does it have like a pointer, like a little arrow underneath which part?
If you can, you can just screenshot it and send us an email. Send one of us.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think that'll probably be the best if that's the case. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Is anyone else having questions?
Everyone able to run this code? Shastri, do you have a question?
Yeah, by the way, my name is Shaman. I ran this and it showed in the terminal, like, along with a bunch of other stuff, hello world in the middle, but the output shows nothing, and then the problems, it shows that on line 3, the print in string is undefined, but I put in exactly like you showed.
Oh, you want to share your screen?
Yeah, sure. Just a sec. It said admin is disabled sharing.
Mr. 2, are you there?
Yeah.
Can you enable screen sharing for all participants? We want to help debug someone's code.
I don't know if there's an option. I think by default everyone has it. I think let's see. There's nothing to enable. I'll have to. Why don't you guys go on and move on? We'll have to figure out how to solve this problem. I know.
Just for now, everyone who's having a problem, send one of the leads an email with the screenshot of your issue.
Vishnu, do you have a question?
Oh no, I was just raising my hand because I was just done with the code. So.
Okay. Anyone else have questions? All right, I think we can move on.
Do you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So now we're going to be talking about a second basic feature of programming languages that you guys should know. And it's something called variables. So basically, when you guys are going to be programming, there's going to be lots of different values that you're going to need to store in some kind of place. And that's basically where variables are going to come into use. So basically, these are going to be memory chunks that are going to remember specific values, and you can reference them later in your code when you need to. And so syntax for variables are going to differ based on what language you're using, but we're using Java. So this is the basic syntax for variable declaration in Java over here. So in our example, we have int hammerheads is equal to 226. So this first word over here, int, this is basically going to be something called a type. So the type is basically going to determine what types of values can be stored in this variable. So for example, for this type over here, we have int. It can only store integer values. But if we have something like a double, for example, then it could also store decimal values. The next important part of the syntax is going to be the name. And then this is basically going to be any name that you can give your variables. And you when naming your variables, you should always keep a specific name, because like as you write like lots of lines of code and stuff, you're gonna forget what basically like each variable is gonna stand for. So if you have a simple name, then you can quickly remember every single variable that you create. And the last part of a variable is going to be the value. So this is just basically the value that's going to be stored by your variable. And we're going to continue talking about variables. And the programming language that we're using, Java, is going to be what's called a type strict language. So basically what this means is that every single variable is going to have a different type. And then basically one variable can store something that belongs to a second variable, for example, variable type. So for example, if I'm declaring an integer variable, I can't store a decimal value and stuff like that. And one key thing to know about variables is that you cannot change the type of variable after declaration. So for example, let's look over here at the example. And the first variable we're declaring is byte b's is equal to 33. So if I wanted b's to be an integer value, for example, I couldn't change it. I'd have to create an entire new variable for that. And so since Java is a type strict language, there's going to be two types of variables. There's going to be primitive, which we're basically going to talk about in this presentation. And there's also a type called objects, which is for a later presentation on a later day. And basically the reason why Java is a type strict language is because it makes for a much better teaching language for rookies. So now we're going to be talking about how you can create variables and how you can assign values to them. So the key thing to know when assigning variable values is that this one equal sign over here, this is basically going to be what's called an assignment operator. So once you add this equal sign over here, basically you can assign any value you want to the variable. So we can see an example over here. So we want to create a variable called sum variable, and we just wanted to store a random integer number. So what we're going to do is we first need to declare a type, and since we're going to store an integer value, we're going to call it int. And then we need to create a name for this variable. So right now we're just going to be naming it sum variable, and we want to assign it a value of 42. So we're going to say equals, and then 42, and then we're going to use a semicolon to end the statement. So now let's say we want some variable to store a different value. So instead of adding the type to it too, we can just use this one variable that we created over here, and we can set a different value to it. So in the second line, you can see we're setting some variable as equal to 93. And then in the third line, we're setting some variable as equal to 27. So now after this third line of program, the final value of some variable is going to be 27 now. And now we want to store a decimal value. And if you guys remember, integers cannot store decimal values. So basically, we can't use this variable some variable to store this decimal value. So what we're gonna have to do is we're going to have to create another variable. And so since we want to store a decimal value, we're gonna be using a double here. So our type is gonna be a double. And our name for this variable is just gonna be another variable. And right now we want to set the value to 1.23, and that's what we do. Now later you might decide that you want another variable to have a different value. So in the second and third line, we're just setting it to different decimal values. So now we're going to be talking about how you should name your variables. And in Java, there isn't much rules on naming your variables, but it is proper etiquette to follow these steps. And so the first key thing you want to remember is that you should always use meaningful names for your variables. Because as I said previously, you're going to be writing a lot of code during FRC season. So you're going to forget your own code over time. And that's why if you have meaningful names for your variables, then you can easily just remember what the variable is storing and what values it store just by looking at the name. And another thing you should know is that most languages are going to have restrictions on what the variable names can be. And then Java does have quite a few restrictions on variable names. So the first restriction is that names are case sensitive. So basically, if you add a lowercase or an uppercase letter, it does eventually matter when you're calling the variables. The second thing is that if you want to create a variable, then the first basically like part of a variable is going to have to start with a letter, a $sign, or an underscore. So for example, if you want to name a variable like int one man, right? You can't start the variable with the number 1. You'd have to actually type it out as 1. But other characters can be letters or digits, $signs, or underscores. So for numbers, for example, you can't start a variable name with a number, but if you want to have a number like in between the variable name somewhere, you can do that. And one opinion that we like to have on this team is that you shouldn't use $signs in names because it's kind of confusing. And there's also specific ways that since Java variables are going to be case sensitive, we do have proper etiquette for naming variables. So for most variables, you're going to have something which is called lower camel case. So basically in lower camel case, if you have multiple words, and then the first word is going to be all lowercase, and then the words after that are going to start with a capital letter, and then you're going to type lowercase for all of them. So for example, over here, we have a variable name, which is example name. And as you can see here, example is our first word in our variable. So we keep it entirely in lowercase. And then name is the second part. So we're going to make the N a capital letter. And for any variable which is going to be a constant, you're going to use upper snake case. So basically what a constant is that as you saw on the previous slides, as you saw on this slide over here, you can change the values of variables as you see fit. But for a constant variable, basically after you define it, you can't change the name of the variable. And basically to show that a variable is a constant, you're going to be following upper snake case. So in upper snake case, every single letter is going to be uppercase. And then if you have to separate between like 2 words, for example, you're going to use this dash over here. So for example, if we want to name a constant called example name, we'd have example and name both in capitals. And then we'd separate the 2 by this dash over here. And now here's some memes for your guys' enjoyment. And now we're going to be talking about primitives. So primitives are basically types of variables in which you can store stuff. And then primitives are only used for storing stuff. They don't have any extra functionality. And primitives are completely different from objects, which we're going to learn about in a different presentation. And so most languages are going to have a very similar set of primitives. And Java, of course, has primitives, as you can see here. In Java, the basic types of primitives that Java has are bytes, shorts, integers, longs, floats, doubles, characters, and booleans. So first, let's start off with a byte. So a byte can basically store any 8-bit integer. So if you need to store a really small value, like any number from negative 128 to 127, you'd probably want to use a byte. But since in programming, we usually won't have numbers which are this small, there are different larger types of primitives available. So the next type of primitive is going to be a short. This stores any 16-bit integer. So any number from negative 32,768 to 32,767. Next, we have an integer, which is one of the most common types of primitives. And when you're typing this out in Java, the type would be an int. And an integer basically stores any 32-bit integer value. So from negative 2 to the power 31 to 2 to the power of 31 minus 1. Next, we have a long, which stores a 64-bit integer, so any value from negative 2 to the power of 63, all the way up to 2 to the power of 63 minus 1. And we have a float, which is a 32-bit floating point decimal value. So basically, these two values over here, floats and doubles, they're able to store different decimal values. And while a float can only store 32 bits, a double can store 64 bits. And next we have a character. And a character basically stores any 16-bit Unicode character. And when you're defining a character, you're going to have single quotes around it. So a character is basically like the letters on an alphabet, for example. So if you want to store the value of A, then you'd use a character. So like any letter, basically. And our final type of primitive that we're going to talk about is the Boolean. So the Boolean is going to only have two possible values, and that's true or false. It can only be these two values. So now we have an example of different Java primitives being used. So this first variable over here, byte b, we're going to be storing it as a byte and a value of 33. Next we have a short, and we're going to name it hot. And we're going to be storing it as a short value and an integer value of 67. Next, we have int hammerheads, and we're just going to store our team number, which is 226. We're going to have long strike force, and we're going to be setting it equal to 2,767. So notice the suffix for a long. So when you're declaring a long value, basically the number is going to have a capital L on the right of the value, without a space in between it. And you're gonna almost do the same thing for a float value. So you can see here we're declaring a float variable, bulldogs, and we want to set it to 35.39. But we can't just set it like that. We have to add a lowercase f to it in order to store it in a float type variable. Next, we're going to be storing a double benzene, and we're just going to be setting it equal to 43.84. You guys don't have to add any D's or anything for a double. You can just keep the decimal value here. Next, we're going to be storing a character value, and we're going to be doing char will win. And then we're going to be setting it equal to the letter Y. And notice that when you guys are storing a character value, you guys need single quotes. If you do double quotes, it won't work. Double quotes is actually a string, which we'll talk about later. And finally, our last type of primitive is Boolean. So we have Boolean 1 is equal to true. And as you recall from the last slide, Booleans can only have a value of true or false. Now we have an exercise that you guys can do if you have VS Code installed. So this is going to be the variables exercise. First, what you guys are going to have to do is you're going to have to create a new VS Code project. And you're going to have to create a main method for it, if you guys remember how to create main methods. And then once you're done completing the main method, inside the main method, you're going to want to declare an integer, a float, and a double variable. And then when you're creating these three variables, choose a meaningful name for each of them. And then you can give it any type of value you want. And then when you guys are done doing this, then click the run button in VS Code to make sure that there's no errors. And I guess 3 minutes should be good enough for you guys. So you guys can begin.
Hey, Arnav and Anish. You guys there?
Yep.
Okay, Nahil, can you mute real quick? You get
Yeah,
his
sure.
Yeah, so the problem people are not able to share screen is they're using Troy High or Troy School District account. So I think what we need to do is tell next time when we're done with this, students have to log out and then log back in by using their Gmail account or, you know, basically register a new account. That's how then that will then they'll show up as guests and then they could share everything.
All right. Yeah. Okay.
If you finish, could you raise your hand whenever you finish?
Okay, so 3 minutes is over. If you guys have finished writing your program, could you guys please raise your hand? Okay, we have 3 people who finished. Okay, we have a lot more people now. So anyone who's not using the school emails, do you guys want to share your code so we could see what you guys have? Alan, do you want to share your code?
Sure. Can you guys see it? Am I sharing?
Yeah, we see it.
Yep.
So Alan, could you explain how you did this exercise?
So I just created 3 variables, age, money in bank, and height. Then for age, I put int, and then for money in bank, I did a double. And then for my height, I put a float. Then I tried printing them out.
Okay, yeah. So guys, if you look at Alan's code, this is basically the perfect example of how to do it. Does anyone have any questions on this exercise? Okay, if not, I guess we can move on to the next section.
Alan, you have your hand up for a question? Or just from...
Oh no, I just forgot to lower it.
Alright, all good, all good.
Alright, so next thing we're going to go over is just mathematical operators. So CPUs and GPUs, which are central processing units, and graphics processing units, are really just very fast number crunchers. So the typical algebraic operators that are built into most languages would be addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and modulo. So modulo is something that you guys might not have used much or heard of. So when you use the percentage symbol, that gives you when you divide two numbers by each other, if it's not like a perfect number, you guys might remember this in like 3rd grade math. If it's not a perfect divisor, it'll give you the remainder. So if you did like 5 modulo 3, that would give you an answer of 2 because 2 is the remainder from that operation. So these are just some examples of the mathematical operators. Oh, frick, 1 second. Okay. So here we have the double price, which is set to $9.95. And if you bought 3 of them, like in both these examples, if you bought 3 of it, you would just add them up like it's pretty intuitive for this, and multiply it by the tax, and that would give you the total number if you bought 3 things at $9.95 and applied tax. And then to write to a screen, which we already went over this, so system.out.println, that puts a new line character at the end of each string, and it'll be used the majority of the time. You can also use system.out, but yeah, mostly you use system.out.println. And the plus sign can also be used not just as a mathematical operator, but it can be used to concatenate strings. So here in this example, where you can do H, like the letter H, plus, and then in string, in quotes, ELLO, and then plus again, another short string that just says world, and that'll add all the strings together and print out hello world. So be careful when you're printing out, or when you're doing mathematical operations, not to like accidentally say, try to add 2 strings that say like 1 and 5 together, because then you're not going to get an answer of 6, you're going to get an answer of 15, because it's going to be adding strings and not number values. And then
Before we go to the exercise, I'd like us to start with coding rooms. If I can share my screen. That's a little bit of we'd like to see this exercise, and coding rooms is basically like a live classroom where we get to see your code, and if you have any problems, it makes it way easier for us to help and debug your code. So it'll make it more interactive of an experience, and we'd enjoy. sorry. So for coding rooms here, if I can share my screen, will it show up? Ah, yes. Okay. Can you guys see the coding room screen?
Yep.
All right, cool. So what I'd like everyone to do is go to codingrooms.com. So once you're on codingrooms.com, go to the login button. Then scroll out, and of course, if you have any issues, just straight up unmute and talk. Then click the continue with Microsoft institutional SSO. So this is like basically signing into your Outlook account. Then just like sign in with your Office account. So for me, I'm Anish Chandra and I graduate in 2023. So H-Chandra23, troyschools.org. Then you'll see, I'll just type in my password, don't keylog me. And once you're here, you'll have like a little bit of a dashboard. Is everyone keeping up? Do you have any issues so far? Raise your hand if you have issues or just straight up on mute. Now, I'm already in the course, but I can get you to it. Once you're here, what I'd like you to do is go to this plus sign. Oh, wait, sorry, not the plus sign. Go to courses over here, top here. Then go over here to join. Then in here, type in the following letters. Hold on, let me get a copy.
You guys can copy it from the chat as well.
Capital T, capital F, lowercase p, lowercase d, capital M, lowercase o, lowercase t, and I believe that's a lowercase l. Is that a lowercase l or an I? Just copy it, paste it from the chat. Then once you have that in, I'll leave it up. Just press join course over here. Now, I'd like to see everyone in the room join. We have a dashboard where we can see all students in the course. We'd like if everyone could join right now. It'll make things a lot easier when we're interacting with you. And then we'll also be counting this as part of your participation. So like if we see that you aren't contributing or aren't practicing or doing nothing during the class, let's say when we're using coding rooms, you don't even do the exercise, we might be considering that day as an absence for you. So this is important. Do we have any questions so far? Is everything working? Just this.
Raise your hand if you're not at that step. Okay, I think everyone's at that step. You can move to the next part.
All right. Can you get a read on how many people have joined? All right. So when you press join course, you'll be on like this main section area. You'll be basically in the course. Essentially the same thing as me going courses and clicking here. You'll be in the assignments category. This you don't have to worry about. This is a test. But the main part where we want you to go is this live classrooms area. And in this live classroom area, you want to go to this My Live Classroom and press this mini play button. It'll take you to a really cool looking, it's kind of intuitive. I like it. It looks pretty nice and solid. Once we get a couple more in, I'll explain what each part is. All right. So to explain how this works is on the student side of what you guys see is you'll see at the top is two tabs, presentation and my workspace. The presentation tab is where everyone is. And you can see it as on the top here. You can see me, you can see our account, you can see all the students in the course, and anyone can edit it. Like add like hi to the end of this comment right here, and everyone can see it. And you can see who's typing as well. So this is like the presentation. This will be the common area for all. Now, the other one, my workspace, is going to be your private workspace where we can look into it, but it's basically you and us that will be like be able to look at this. So let's say we wanted to print hello world. We have our there's like already a basic program. This is if you can see even here, I'm the student. We have our programming leads account over here. They can see into it. This is your IDE area. This is where you'll be this will be most of your programming right here. Does that make sense? Any questions? We still good? All right, cool. So then, of course, let's say I want to print hi, because hello world is cringy. You just type in whatever your code is, put it in your main statement, main function, which this is where most of our first couple days, this is where most of our code is going to be. We'll just go over here, and to run your code, you just press run. Then at the bottom, you'll have a nice intuitive console that's pretty easy to read. It works, looks like it said hi. And then of course, if you have an error, let's say a missing semicolon, it'll run, it'll give you an error, and it'll look like this. And then of course, if let's say you have an issue, let's say I have an issue with my code and I want someone to help me, you just tell us, and let's say programming leads is you have a missing semicolon. They can just straight up come in and help us by adding it in, as you see right there. And then run, done. Any questions beyond at that point? Then, of course, if you're a little shy, we also have an option called My Live Classroom Chat, where you can chat with us or with everyone here. So I'm going to say hi. Or not there, but here. Yeah, so we can just say hi and they can respond hello. This is if you just want to communicate to one of us. Let's say you have an issue. Is there any problem with that? Is anyone having problems getting into coding rooms? No, right? Still, we're all good? Cool. Then, of course, why only work on one file when you can work on 10? So if you click this button, applies to both workspaces, the presentation and my workspace. If you click the file button, you can see you can see all your files in here. So let's say we wanted to create one called poggers.java. We'd press enter, and there you go. We have a new Java file that, let's say I will just copy everything from here, copy, and then just go over here. There's no paste for some reason. Just paste it, and then if I ever wanted to run it, you'd have to, instead of it being main.java, oh wait, this will give an error. Make sure your class names are always the same as your file. We'll learn of why that needs to be later, but just make sure for now. Then let's say we want to run this file. We'll click this drop-down bar and click run poggers.java, and it'll run. Does that make sense? Okay, so if all that makes sense, and I don't think I'm forgetting anything, I believe we can move on to our exercise. Eileen, would you like to, for now, just do your exercise in main.java for practice today?
You can test out what it means. Here, I'll share the slide with the exercises.
Yep. So if you all can, just do the exercise in coding rooms, and then if you have any issues, of course, either raise your hand and then we can help you. Raise your hand, unmute, whatever. All right, cool.
So this is using the variables that you guys created earlier. I need to print each of the 3 variables concatenated with a meaningful string. such as like the example that's given here. So you need to print the sum of all three variables, print the product of all three, and then just make sure that the output is correct in the console window. And then when you guys are done, actually, yeah, just put your hand up when you, actually, because we can see it on coding room, so. Actually, yeah, whenever you guys are done, just put your hand up on Microsoft Teams and we'll make sure that everyone's good.
I'm seeing a couple of people with just their print statements still there, the default print statements. If you can start your exercise, that would be cool.
Yeah, Nish, there's a student who raised the hand.
Oh yeah. Are you raising your hand because you're done, or did you have a question?
I was done.
All right, cool. Shamant, were you done, or did you have a question?
I was done too.
All right, cool.
Okay, does anyone want to show the code? Anyone who's on? How about Leah? Because I think she said she was done earlier.
Oh, I'm doing the coding on a different device.
Oh, okay. Can you paste it into the presentation workspace?
Yeah.
Yeah, just like Control A, Control C, Control V. The 3 best keybinds ever created.
Kind of sleepy on Control C there.
Yeah. Oh, I almost forgot our best version control. You want to just run them down through your code?
Sure. So I just noted that the public class was main. Then the 3 variables I did were a double, an integer, and a short. My variable name for the double was hi, and then that was equivalent to 37.5. Hello was equivalent to 15, and then hammerheads is equal to 226. And then I just, to add all the variables together, I just had all of the variable names and then added them. And then for multiplying all of them, I just had all the variable names with the multiplication operator.
Alright, looks good. Anyone have any questions?
Anyone have any issues?
Also that.
Again, from Monday on, we will be using coding rooms to help us gauge your participation, and we'll, in case that you don't participate as much as we expected, or expect you to, we could mark you, or we may mark you absent.
Yeah, I think we're done with our presentation for today. So we'll just run through a quick overview of what we expect on Monday. So first things first, as you guys might have heard Mr. Tu say, please get a Microsoft Teams account that's not through your school email. That way, on Monday, we won't expect everyone to have their cameras on too. That's one, and have the ability to share their screen when they're asked. Secondly, we expect everyone to have VS Code and coding rooms installed. There was only 10 people on coding rooms at during our demonstration today, so we hope that everyone here can get that done by Monday. And Anisha, am I missing anything else?
If you have problems with VS Code, stay with us after.
Yep.
This is John here. I have a question for the students who are doing Microsoft Teams meeting. Raise your hand if you're doing Microsoft Teams through your web browser. Okay, 5, 6 of you. Okay, you can lower your hand now. Raise your hand if you are using Microsoft through a desktop client that you installed. Okay, I see. Okay, so what you're going to want to do is this. Regardless of which method that you're using, I think some of you, especially the rookies, probably by default, you know, you already have these accounts through Troy School District Microsoft account. So when you're logging into Microsoft Teams, by default, it probably use your choice school district email account. And when you do that, the Microsoft team, we're running it through my work from Beaumont. So that causes your system not to be able to allow you to do as to share as a presenter. So what we need you to do is log out of your Microsoft account, and you can do that through the web or through your desktop, and create a new Microsoft account. And when you're creating a new Microsoft account, Teams account, you should put in your personal email, such as Gmail, Yahoo Mail, or whatever else. But whatever you use, do not use your choice school district account. Okay. And once you do that, it may ask you for birthday information, and you may want to. I think if you're underage, it may get your parents to validate that account. But once you had the account set up and you log into Microsoft Teams using that personal account, then you should be able to share content just with everybody else. I will send out some information on that, but that's how we would do it.
That also reminds me, make sure you guys fill out our form. That's how we'll be mostly contacting you, because in the form we get your email. So this form will help us try to keep in contact with you, get you put on an emailing list, and eventually put on something like a Slack workspace. I think besides that, does anyone have questions? All right, then everyone who is all set and all good to go, on coding rooms, and VS Code is working great, you're good to leave. If either one is not working for you, just stay after class. We can help you out with that. Besides that, I think class is dismissed.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.